right, we're going to get started right away because, as I was saying, I have a hard stop at the top of the hour. Impulsively, when I decided that I was going to do this yesterday, I didn't really think about the fact that I have something else going on right after this. So teach me. But here I have a motivation for wanting to do this so quickly and on such short notice. And that is because tonight we are starting another live session of the foundations modules. And the cravings module, which is being offered for free preview right now, is module 3 from that bigger course, from that larger course. And so I just wanted to take a bit of time, not only to introduce you to the Sweet Sobriety team, foundations itself, but I want to give you some highlights from that module. I want to make sure you have the link to that module if you don't already have access to it. And I want to answer questions about cravings as well as foundations all before the hour is over. So I'm feeling pretty ambitious. We'll see how I do. But here we go. Let's go ahead and get started first. And if I have time, I really want to give you a peek into what foundations actually looks like when you sign up and you're a student. So let's talk about who we are, what we do, all of that. So I'm just making it so I can't see you. So if you have anything that you want to say, you can just come off mute or raise your hand. So as you can see, Clarissa and I are on the screen. My name is Molly Painshaw. I co-founded Sweet Sobriety along with Clarissa Kennedy. So briefly about myself, I am what is called a national board certified counselor. I am a licensed addiction counselor and a licensed clinical professional counselor, which just means mental health counselor in Montana. As I said, I'm a co-founder of Sweet Sobriety. I co-host the Food Junkies podcast along with Clarissa Kennedy, who you see on the screen here, as well as Dr. Vera Tarman, who wrote the book Food Junkies. I'm also a co-host of the Food Shrinks podcast, which is brand new, just launched in October of 2024 with Clarissa Kennedy and Molly Carmel, who wrote Breaking Up with Sugar. I'm definitely an advocate for the recognition of ultra-processed food use disorder to be a legitimate diagnosis. I actively contribute to research, public awareness campaigns, and professional discussions around ultra-processed food use disorder. I've definitely got a passion for empowering individuals on this journey so that you can reclaim your health and your well-being. And some fun little things about me: if I'm not working, I'm either in the mountains hiking, or I'm playing Dungeons and Dragons or some game with my family, or maybe even taking a spontaneous road trip. I also love to travel. So that's a little bit about me personally. Clarissa here, who you see on the screen, is a registered social worker in Ontario, Canada, with over 15 years of experience. I've also been in the field since 2005, that I didn't mention that. She's the founder of Reinvent Your Bliss Point, co-founder of Sweet Sobriety. She's co-host of Food Junkies, co-host of Food Shrinks. And she brings a personal connection to recovery. She brings her personal story. She also brings a compassionate and safe therapeutic perspective to her work. We also have others who work with us. CJ Nye works with us. She's a certified food addiction coach. She's passionate about guiding individuals through challenges and triumphs in recovery. She utilizes evidence-based strategies to empower the folks she works with for long-term healing and combines personal and professional experience. Joan, who you see in the middle there, is also a licensed professional counselor like myself. She's a nationally certified food and addictions coach. She has been in recovery from food addiction for more than 2 years and has successfully maintained her weight loss for the first time using the principles taught by Sweet Sobriety. And finally, on the screen, you see Elaine. And Elaine is who is going to be facilitating this live session the next 12 weeks of Foundations, which is going to be Monday nights, starting tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern. And Elaine is a dedicated recovery coach. She's passionate about helping individuals reclaim their lives and achieve lasting well-being She has over 40 years of experience as a mindfulness meditator and yogini, specializing in self-care and self-forgiveness practices. She was a licensed mental health counselor in Washington, but has since let her license lapse, which is totally fine. We're here for recovery coaching anyway. And she has a a holistic and integrative approach to recovery. She's certified in yoga, parenting by connection, social emotional learning, group facilitation, team building, somatic experiences, and mental fitness coaching. And she helps clients tap into their innate wisdom to develop sustainable strategies for lasting recovery. In her free time, she enjoys sewing, wool felting, gardening, dancing, hiking, and canine education, nurturing creativity and connection to nature. So that's just a little bit about our team. If you want to learn more about us, we are all over the About page on the website. So before we jump into Cravings, which is actually module 3 in the foundations, I just want to give you a little bit of information about Sweet Sobriety Foundations and like how we came to Cravings being module number 3, all of that. So something to keep in mind, this is just part of a much larger, more comprehensive program, that there are 12 modules that cover key aspects of food addiction recovery. There are 22 videos. There's about 16 hours of content across those 12 modules. There are something like 60 downloadable resources that includes like the slides that are presented in the videos and worksheets and guides and tools. There are at least 63 unique recovery skills. Again, I'm a human and I make mistakes. I may have miscounted or doubled up or not given myself enough credit. But certainly we have a lot of unique recovery skills that are given in the foundations modules. It is a structured learning path. There is a very specific reason why those modules are structured and presented to you in the order that they are presented. Overall, Sweet Sobriety takes a holistic approach. We are trauma-informed care presenting. We are harm reduction clinicians, meaning harm reduction is a tool that we rely on heavily. However, that doesn't mean that abstinence is not a tool that we don't agree with or that we don't use. We absolutely do. The beautiful thing about foundations is that once you purchase, it's accessible anytime, anywhere, where you can go at your own pace, that kind of thing, all for $300 US. And then the other beautiful thing about foundations is that once you purchase, you've purchased it. You're grandfathered in. So anytime we run live workshops, so 12-week workshops on foundations, you are welcome to join at no extra cost. So some skills, when I talk about those unique recovery skills, some things to keep in mind is that we focus heavily on your relationship with food and cravings. So we talk a lot about trigger management, impulse control, and craving reduction, mindful eating practices. We really want to help folks overcome emotional and psychological barriers. So we have cognitive restructuring worksheets and tools. We talk a lot about emotional regulation, self-compassion, body acceptance. We want folks to break free from the cycle of addiction and return to use or recurrence. So we have skills and tools around abstinence and withdrawal, giving you strategies and some ideas for how you can manage those early days when it can be pretty tough for folks. We really want to help you make better decisions and set boundaries in your life. We want to help you build resilience and foster long-term success. And finally, we really focus on building overall sustainable and empowering changes in your life so that you can have a recovery strategy that works for you. So we do talk about journaling and self-monitoring and creating routines and anchor points in our days and managing our stress, setting goals, connecting to the larger community at large. So that's just a little bit about Sweet Sobriety Foundations to kind of give you a framework from where we're coming from. So again, if you're a person who has already accessed the free, and it's the full module, it's free for you to go access. And if you haven't, I'll make sure you get that link. If you have, this might help give you some clarity as to like why it maybe feels maybe a bit disjointed. And if you haven't yet, this might get you going a little bit. So, some things that folks have had to say is, Sweet Sobriety is more than a program. It's a community. There's encouragement, tools, a belief that we can recover. Somebody said, I didn't think I'd ever be able to quit sugar, but sweet sobriety gave me the tools and support I need to make it possible. Sweet sobriety has helped transform my health, right? I've lost 55 pounds. My prediabetes is now in remission. It isn't just a program, it's a space where you can truly learn and grow. Another thing about sweet sobriety, and I will make sure you folks get the link, is that we did a clinical audit using these modules. We have one paper with amazing results published, and the second one is coming, and the results are just as amazing. So we looked at post-intervention. So we looked at intervention, post-intervention, 6 months. And now this new paper will look at 1 year out after completing. And at the time, it was only 10 modules, and now it's 12. So there's a lot of good things coming from this work. So to get to what we're all really here for is we want to talk about cravings, and something to keep in mind is what I'm going to go over on these slides is really just a highlight from that module. That module has 3 parts. So it has about 90 minutes of video, and it has, I would say, somewhere in the vicinity of around 5 to 8 downloadable tools, in PDF form, that kind of thing for you to look at and work on, including the slides. So I just want to like put that out there as to why we're going to just do highlights versus, the whole dang thing. So what are cravings and why do they even matter? So cravings are that intense urge to consume, in this case, ultra processed foods. And it's a major challenge in food addiction recovery. So just like with alcohol or other substances, right? These triggers or cravings can trigger a return to use or a recurrence. And so we really need to take a look at how can we stop that from happening or throw a wrench in it. So something that we need to know and understand is the biological aspect of these things. So when we think about substance use disorder, it is biopsychosocial, emotional, and then, this argument for spiritual, which we do cover in the foundations modules. So the biological aspect of things says that there is a trigger, a craving, a response, and a reward. And that's because the brain has formed strong associations between ultra processed foods and pleasure. And it wants to continue to seek those rewards even after we've decided, listen, I'm done with this thing. I'm putting it down. I'm ready to be in recovery, or I'm ready to be abstinent, whatever the thought is. And it can make cravings a significant hurdle to long-term success. So the brain chemistry says that when we are triggered, so we maybe have a social situation that's triggering to us, or maybe we've been in Costco on the day that they're baking. So now we've had this smell. Now we have this craving because we have what's called euphoric recall, meaning I can smell that thing, I can see that thing, I can talk about that thing, I can be in an argument with somebody and all the think, ooh, cosmic brownie. Like I have that euphoric recall. So now I'm craving it. Now I might be salivating. Now it might be the only thing that I can think of. And so now my response is to start seeking that out or planning for a way to get it, consuming the thing, and then the reward comes. And that is like just the cascade of neurochemical response that we get when we use these substances. And so that is then how the brain forms those strong associations with the ultra processed food. We also have to remember that cravings can manifest in different ways physically. So you might actually experience withdrawal when you come off of these things. The first 3 to 5 days up to 14 are typically the hardest. And this might be when you experience nausea, headache, fatigue, like flu-like symptoms. A lot of people call it the keto flu. And so we have to really think about how we're going to take care of our cravings at that time. And this is going to be a time when some of that biochemical repair that we talk about in that module come into play. You may want to use things like electrolytes and L-glutamine or inositol, something like that. And these are all offered in the module. You can make your own electrolytes if you don't trust what's out there, or if you know that you're very sensitive to alternative sweeteners, which many of them do have. Cravings can also be psychological. So these tend to be more prominent. Now they happen in the beginning days, but once we're through that physical withdrawal, it can flip flop. And the physical withdrawal aspect of things starts to get quiet, starts to be a little more manageable, or we're like, we don't even pay attention to it nearly as much. But the psychological cravings, those obsessive thoughts about food, can really start to play a role in our life. And then we have those environmental cravings. So again, like the seeing or smelling them, and it can trigger that desire. So we can be cued in our environment. So the physical cravings don't necessarily have to do with any of the cues. It can have to do with the withdrawal. The psychological cravings can just be a thought that pops into our head that then we can't let go. And then there are those environmental cues. So, something I want to share here is that 85% of people in addiction recovery experience cravings and the potential to return to use, uh, and have potential to return to use recurrence within the first year. So, 85% of people. And this lines up with what we know from research coming out of Harvard, John Kelly, and we had him on the podcast not that long ago, and a second part it will be released this season as well. His research really speaks to the fact that it can take folks 7 years of doing this work to get their first year of sustained abstinence. So I just want to put that out there as a normalization of whatever it is you're experiencing. If you're finding yourself on, off, whatever that might be, that to keep moving forward, keep showing up for yourself, keep trying. Cravings absolutely are the number one thing that I think hitch people up early on in this journey. So let's talk a little bit more about it. So in the module, we talk about triggers and high risk factors. So some things to keep in mind here is that triggers can be external, things like sights, smells, social events. They can be internal, emotions. And we have a whole we have a whole module on emotions, we have a whole module on stress, we have a whole module on distress intolerance. But things like anxiety and loneliness can also contribute to being a trigger to foods, especially because they get paired with things like oxytocin, serotonin, those feel good and love neurochemicals are also bound up in cravings or in this pathway. Trauma can be a big activator. It can influence cravings as well. And then other things like poor sleep, being in pain, emotional distress, scrolling too much, other substance use disorders, or process addictions can also contribute. And these are what are often considered high risk factors. So, our emotional states, our environmental triggers, our physical states, our overconfidence in recovery. Sometimes we can like start to believe, I've got this. I'm never going to like make a mistake again, or I don't have to be careful. Social pressures, lack of structure, if we're a person or people who need structure, our self-talk can play a role, as well as like isolation and secrecy. And so these high risk factors, when then combined with seemingly unimportant decisions, things like going home the same way every night to drive right past our favorite corner store to pick up our favorite whatever binge snack, that can be a seemingly unimportant decision. Keeping these things in the house because we have other people that live with us that maybe they eat them too. Skipping our self-care routines. So thinking about not when so self-care is more than just pampering. It's things like doing dishes, prepping our meals, planning our meals, folding our clothes, making our bed. So when we skip those routines, we can get out of sorts. Scrolling through food content, that can be a seemingly unimportant decision. Allowing, quote, just one exception can be a seemingly unimportant decision of like, oh, I'm out traveling and I'm just going to allow myself this exception of something that I know that isn't, I know it lights up my brain. And if I'm at home, I know I'm in trouble, but maybe just this one time while I'm out, it'll be okay. When we eat in distracted distracted or distracting environments, and when we engage in old habits. These are all like seemingly unimportant decisions. So when those high risk factors, like I haven't gotten enough sleep, is paired with a seemingly unimportant decision of like, I'm going to stop at the grocery store on my way home from work, and I've just had a really intense day at work, and my defenses are maybe not like my armor isn't maybe where it needs to be. That high risk factor of being stressed out, maybe even over emotional, maybe even a bit vulnerable, combined with the seemingly unimportant decision to stop at the grocery store on my way home, can be the perfect storm for uh return to use, for recurrence, any of that. So I'm curious to know, if you ask yourself, what are some of your personal triggers? When do you crave ultra processed foods the most? Or what emotions or environments trigger your cravings? What are the hardest triggers for you to manage? And you can either come off mute or you can throw them in the chat, whatever you feel the most comfortable with, because again, we are recording. So talk to me. What are the hardest triggers you come up against personally when you're attempting to manage cravings? Yes, when you're sick, parties, absolutely. Tired, emotional, yeah. Travel, yeah, especially if you're a person who travels a lot. The time between end of work and dinner time, yeah. Fight with loved ones. When people bring snacks to work, when you need to set a boundary. Home a lot, so no social plans on the weekend. Yeah, so sometimes that lack of structure, going to the grocery store, making my child's food. Yes, snacking during meal prep, seeing weight and being disappointed. Sometimes it's a place, like at a computer. Bored and lonely, overwhelmed, dinner, watching Netflix, lack of routine. Absolutely. Yeah. So let's talk about that. Let's look at how can we better manage our cravings. So the first thing that I like to do is I like to start at like, what is the lowest hanging fruit on the branch, right? What is like the place that I can do a lot of good, have the biggest effect for the least amount of work. And this is often going to be starting in our physical environments. So removing those foods from our environment if we can. And this includes home, our car, our workplace, anywhere that we are, consistently showing up for some significant period of time. Now, again, we do not always have full control of those environments. And I don't want to make it seem like, oh, it's as easy as just getting these things out of your environment. You may work in a place with coworkers who don't eat the same way you do. You may ride in a vehicle with people who do not eat the same way you do. You may live in a home with people who do not eat the same way as you do. So if we cannot remove these things from our environment, can we do other things? Can we put our food at our eye level? Can we move their things out of our eyesight? In my home, we have like high above, like on top of the refrigerator, on the top shelf of the shelving structure that we have. That's where we keep those things that not only am I staying away from, but I don't necessarily want my children to constantly have access to. Not that they don't have access to it, because they do, but out of sight, out of mind. So things that are, crunchy and salty and sweet, those kinds of things, they go on different shelves. So the things that are eye level are things like fresh fruits and vegetables, eggs, that kind of thing. We can also structure our meals to prevent hunger-driven cravings. So a strategy that we talk a lot about in Foundation, specifically in Module 1, which is about the food plans and mindful eating, is we talk about timing meals. And it's not a hard and fast rule. If you're a person who needs flexibility in that, I am. Some days I eat meals on a regular schedule. Some days I'm eating meals 8 hours in between each other. And that works for me. but that should not be permission for you to do it if it doesn't work for you. But when we structure our meals, and they're timed, it can be a way for us to get ahead of hunger, physical hunger driven cravings. It can also be a touch point for us to remind ourselves, hey, you're okay. You're going to eat again in X amount of time. We can also do delay and distract things. So, delay and distract means you're going to delay the amount of time before you eat the thing. And while you're delaying, you might also be distracting, or you might delay and then distract, or, whatever combination works for you. So, delay means we're going to give it 10 minutes. Distract means we're going to do something else instead. So, maybe I'm going to say, I had this thought that I'm hungry or that I need to eat, but I'm not quite sure that I actually am. I'm going to set a timer. And maybe I'm not sure that I actually am for many reasons. Maybe I haven't been very connected with my body because I've been in lots of meetings sitting in front of the computer. Maybe I haven't been drinking enough water because I've been on all of these meetings. And maybe my body or my brain, excuse me, thinks that it's hunger. But when I check in with my body, I'm not getting any of like my physical hunger cues. My stomach isn't actually growling. I'm not feeling woozy or lightheaded. And really, it's only been a couple hours since I've last eaten something. So I might delay. I might say, okay, I'm going to set a timer for 10 minutes. And in that time, I am going to breathe, or I'm going to reconnect with my body, because my situation, right, that I'm giving is that I haven't been very connected with myself. If I do that and I find and I reconnect with myself and I'm like, yeah, you're actually not hungry. Go drink some water because you haven't had enough water. Go take a bio break. You haven't done that in a while. Get up and move your body for just a few minutes. I might find that it's actually not a physical craving and instead it's a psychological craving. So, delay and distract is not meant to help you restrict food for a long period of time. It is simply meant to build in a pause so that you can turn back on your prefrontal cortex or allow that to come back online, because you've been emotionally hijacked. That craving hijacks your brain, shutting down this part of your brain, which means you no longer have access to a fully functioning brain. It's going to be a lot harder to make those rational decisions for yourself. The more critical thinking aspect of your brain lives there, so that's also shut down a bit. Let's talk about psychological and emotional strategies. Just to name a few, you can name it to tame it is one of the things we talk about. So you hear people talk about it being called the sugar dragon or red dog or the toddler in my head. Some people give them names like Betty, or we have one person who used to call it the itty bitty shitty committee in my head. So, you can make it fun, you can make it whatever. If this is not something that works for you, that doesn't work for you. But if you naming it to make it something separate from yourself is helpful to you, we take you through how to do that. Urge surfing is another tool that we talk about in module 3 in that cravings management module, where we talk about imagining the craving as a wave. And how do you ride it as if you were surfing it on a surfboard, and sticking with the fact that like as it rises, that's like the peak of the craving. And if we can ride it as it smooths out, we don't ever actually have to fight that craving. We don't ever actually have to do much about it other than just allow and notice what's happening in our body as we're just allowing it to happen. And again, there are detailed instructions as to how to go through that tool in the module. We also talk a lot about cognitive reframing. So replacing those thought traps when it comes to psychological and emotional triggers for cravings. So things like that can be like when we think, oh, one bite won't hurt, right? This is when we might reframe it of like calling ourselves out. Like, I never stop at just one. Like, if that's a thing, I know I never stop at just one. I'm deluding myself if I, try to make myself believe that quote, one bite won't hurt. So these are some psychological and emotional strategies that we use in that module as well. And then finally, we talk about, and I shouldn't say finally as if that's the only thing, but we also talk about behavioral and habit change techniques. So, self-binding strategies, making that behavior more difficult, increasing the friction. So, like if then situations. In order for me to do this thing, I have to do this thing. So, we talk about things like, and this comes up a lot in the first two modules as well. So, again, module three isn't stand it can be standalone, but there's lots of build to it as well. So let's say you come to me and you're like, Molly, I really want this Snickers bar, and nothing I do or say or put in place keeps me from doing this, eating the Snicker bar or wanting the Snicker bar. So you and I might say, okay, let's make that a little bit more difficult, because you're saying you want it and there's a part of you that doesn't. So what if we say, all right, you can have that Snicker bar, but first you're going to delay, and then you're going to distract. And then if you still want that Snicker bar, you're going to put it on a plate. You're going to get a knife, a fork. You're going to cut it into pieces. You're going to poke each individual bite, and you're going to take a bite, put down your utensils, and you're going to chew it until you can't chew it anymore. Then you're going to take 10 deep breaths before you take your next bite, or something along those lines, right? Like this is it's a, uh, it's a conversation between me and you, or whoever it is that's working with you, to come up with some of these self-binding strategies, or how we make it more difficult. There's also that response interruption and redirection, things that we can do to throw the wrench in there. So we're like, oh, no, thank you, redirect. So thinking back to like those delay and distract type things. Also, we use visualization techniques. So this might be where, well, to go back to the redirection and response interruption, this is where we might pair I might ask you, or you might want to ask yourself, what would I rather be doing? And so this might be where you say, well, I'd rather have a different habitual response in this place. So maybe instead of always coming home, throwing down my stuff and going straight to the refrigerator, I want to come home and jump straight into the shower and put on different clothes, just to throw a wrench in that cycle. And then the visualization techniques. So one of them that we do is mastery imagery, and this is where you might picture yourself in a very specific way, very strong, almost like a superhero or an inanimate object, even, like envisioning yourself like a tank or like a Superman type or Superwoman type character that can overcome cravings. And it sounds really woo woo, but I promise you, vivid imagery is a super powerful tool that we use in cognitive behavioral therapy all the time. It's just a matter of finding the visual that works for you, or the image that works for you. You can also do something like negative positive consequences. So like you can do a pros and cons of eating the thing, a pros and cons of not eating the thing. And this can help you visualize the benefits of resisting the urge or resisting the craving, and the cost of giving in. In module three, you will also build a cravings management or a recovery management plan. So in it, you're going to identify your personal triggers and high risk situations. So some of those those worksheets we've already worked on at this point. We ask you to plan ahead for common triggers. Like actually planning for a slip is part of that structured plan that we give you, that you get to fill out. And again, if that's not something that works for you, don't worry about that. But we ask you to plan for a slip. So in case of emergency, this is just like when we were kids at school and we, prepared for a fire or a tornado or a bombing or a shooting or whatever it is. We practice those things over and over and over again when we don't actually need them, so that if in the event, God forbid, that we ever need to actually evacuate for one reason or another, we know how to do that. And even though we'll be escalated, we will be hijacked, we will have practiced that thing over and over and over again. So we will know what to do. So in that plan, we do ask you to plan for a slip. If this happens, then this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to call these people. I'm going to go to these meetings. I'm going to figure out who is going to support me as I get these things out of my environment. What corrective actions am I going to take? Do I have an alternate plan for the future? We then have you go into addressing your emotional lifestyle, like how will you manage your emotions, like anger, anxiety, boredom, loneliness, rejection, that kind of thing. We also talk about your cognitive and thinking lifestyle. So strategies for managing fantasies that come up, even defense mechanisms, self-talk, permission-giving thoughts. We ask how you are going to handle employment, so like your work-related stress. And this is all in a very structured, downloadable document that then you can work on and then you bring to group when you're part of that bigger foundations uh, course that's going on. We cover interpersonal lifestyle, we cover partner marital lifestyle, physical lifestyle, parenting lifestyle, empathy lifestyle, spiritual lifestyle in that recovery management plan. Because again, our cravings are not just physical. If it were that simple, we all would have put it down and left it alone the first time we wanted to do that. So just in closing, and this is where I'm going to open it up to questions and we can share the actual course. I'm happy to show that to you if you want to. Just some key takeaways when we're looking at managing triggers or cravings is to identify what your triggers are so that you can make a plan around them, so that you're not walking out into the world surprised every time you smell a specific smell, or you see that same billboard, or you drive past that same store, or you have that same interaction with that same person or similar over and over again. And then we want to apply those craving management strategies and build a support system. Because even though we have tools, we don't necessarily have the skills to use the tools yet. But when we lean on other people, they can help us, they can help us by encouraging us. They can help us by giving us some of their kind of insider tidbits. When they've been in that situation, here's how they've done it, that kind of thing. And so I'm curious to know, before we open it up to questions about cravings and anything else in the time that we have left, I'm curious to know what craving management strategy do you imagine you might try out today or in the next few days? And you can put it in the chat if you want. Anybody have any thoughts? Anybody who has accessed module 3 and done some of the work? Anything coming up? Meal planning. Absolutely. Anybody else? Okay. Well, if you think of anything, let me know. I want to open it up to some questions. Oh, distraction. Been fighting doing dishes instead of eating. Perfect. Community of like-minded people. Yes. 5-minute meditation before a meal. Absolutely. Those are wonderful. I love it. Breath work, connection, distraction. Doing that right now. Love it. Yes. Great. Okay. So talk to me about what are the questions that you have specifically for yourself or in general, I guess, around cravings. That's what we're here for, is to talk about cravings. And I'm going to make sure that I put some things into the chat. I want to make sure you folks have some links to some things. So as you're thinking about those questions, what questions do we have about cravings? Okay. So I'm lacking the discipline, willpower not to engage in behaviors. So the first thing I want to say is that if this is addiction for you, substance use disorder for you, it's not about a lack of willpower or discipline. Okay. So it's those, I just want to make sure that we're like very clear about that. So to not engage in behaviors, absolutely, Martine. So here's the thing. When we try to do it on our own, we only have what we have. When we ask for help, and maybe that's with a coach, maybe that's with a therapist, maybe that's with a community of people, we then have all these other people that will help support us, that help boost us as we are navigating those things. So the beautiful part about Foundations is it has its own dedicated WhatsApp chat. And that's where you see people show up and say, listen, I'm struggling right now with a craving, or even in group membership, or even in the free groups. In the free peer support group also has dedicated WhatsApp chat, and you can read people are having cravings, and other people from around the world. It's international, so it could be 3 o'clock in the morning for you, but somebody is wide awake over in the UK or somewhere else. And they're going to jump in there and give you encouragement, maybe even give you some suggestions, whatever it might be. But I would also say, if you find yourself on again, off again, on again, off again, this is called chronic ambivalence. And so it can keep you really stuck for a really long time. And chronic ambivalence says, I want to, I don't want to, I do, I don't, that kind of thing. And so getting really clear about what it is that you do want. So maybe right now there's a part of you that doesn't fully buy into abstaining from the things that are making you feel insane. But there might be a part of you that says, but you know what I can do? I can increase my water, or I can increase the amount of vegetables I'm eating, or I can not go to the drive-through, or I can make sure that I'm weighing and measuring at least my protein at every meal, or I can start making sure that my meals are enough and they aren't too far between, so I'm not getting physically hungry. So those are some ways that you can start to ease in there if you're finding it hard to get that momentum. Does that help? Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Check these other ones here. Is it true? Okay. When I'm in the middle of a craving, I have zero perspective. I have no control. Absolutely. Because you are hijacked. That is because this part of your brain that gives perspective, that gives rational thought, is offline. So this is why we practice craving management tools. This is how we gain skills, right? Is we have to practice to get the skills. This is just like a sport or anything else that we're learning. I can give you all the things, but if you don't practice with them, you're not going to know how to use them when you really need them. Is it true that eating protein, fiber while I'm in an active craving can help stop it? Oh, well, that is a question that only you can answer for you. While some people have found that to be true for them, other people may not find that to be true for them. I've had lots of people who find that instead of eating, which then continues to pair the craving, the urge with food, I find that some people really like using electrolytes at that point, or L-glutamine. If you're going to engage in any of these things, make sure that if you're on medications, that's not contraindicated. And if not L-glutamine, inositol, they find that that can really help with that craving as well. What's the difference between a craving and just a habit? Sometimes I'm not thinking I want something sweet. It's like my brain just says, you're sitting at the computer, you're watching something on Amazon Prime, and you have to have something to eat. Yeah. I mean, I think you just nailed it. So a craving is that like intense urge right here, right now. It's probably a very specific thing. It's like if you've experienced cravings, they can be pretty freaking powerful. Now, that being said, habits get tied to those cravings, right? So the habit of sitting at the computer, and in the past, it's been this hand to mouth thing as a distraction because the thing I'm doing is painful in some way, shape, or form. You can crave that habit. And what does that habit look like? What have you always done? So try it out. If you're this person, try replacing the popcorn or the chips or whatever it is with the carrots, with the celery, with something crunchy, or with something salty, things that are not actually lighting up your brain, and see what happens. How do I determine if it's an actual physical craving or an emotional social instinct craving to be social with others around food? The wanting to belong concept, the wanting to belong. Yes. Okay. So physical cravings typically subside if you withdraw from all of the substances that cause the cravings. Those subside within the first 2 weeks. So if you are still eating things that are lighting up your brain, though, it's most likely a physical craving. So physical cravings are things that happen when withdrawal. So if I'm a person who drinks a lot of soda pop, or fizzy beverages or whatever we're calling them, wherever we're at in the world. I want to make sure I cover the basis so you know what I'm talking about. If I'm drinking a Diet Coke all the time and then I stop drinking the Diet Coke, I might go through actual physical withdrawal, depending on me personally. How often am I using it? How much am I consuming? That kind of thing. And so if I know, listen, I just came off that soda and that yesterday, and I'm feeling some kind of way today. I'm feeling nauseous. I'm feeling jittery. I'm feeling whatever. I know that's a physical withdrawal. We also have to remember physical cravings feel different than psychological, emotional cravings. So I don't know if I'm helping to answer that very well. But at the end of the day, my question back to you is, how much does it matter in that moment? The better question is, do you have a plan for when cravings do come up? And then if you go do module 3, which I put that link in there, if you go do that module, it's going to help you determine what is physical, what is emotional, and give you different tools that you can use in those moments. But again, to practice them when you don't actually need them is part of the trick there. Working on safe meals when housemate brings in fast food. Yeah, absolutely. So there may be physical cravings going, like if you're smelling it, there may be actual physical cravings going on. That then may also then trigger euphoric recall. And it may also then be tied to social aspects of it. So maybe this is a person that you've quote used with in the past, or maybe your relationship revolves around food. That can have a very emotional aspect to it as well. How do physical cravings and emotional cravings differ? Yeah, so basically they differ for the most part. Physical cravings occur because you are still ingesting the physical thing that when I stop using it, I now have withdrawal. So cravings then are a part of withdrawal. And emotional cravings come from that place of like, I just want to soothe. I just want to change how I'm feeling. I either don't want to feel it at all. I want to blunt it. I want to feel it even more. So hopefully that helps a little bit. And I just wanted to take, are there any free peer support Zoom? Yes, we have 5 a week on Zoom. They have a WhatsApp associated with it. So they stay connected between meetings. The meetings are all on Zoom. They use WhatsApp to stay connected. That is one of those links. If you go to the resources link that I posted in the chat, all the meetings should be there as well. I wanted to share really quick what it looks like when you do foundations. So when you are a student in foundations, the full thing, you will see all your modules here to the left. So there's intro through 11, which is 12. The very first module is screening. So the video takes you through the Yale Food Addiction Scale. And then there are some things to download here that go along with it. Module 1 is about understanding ultra-processed food addiction and mindful eating. So again, there are 2 videos, and then each has its own set of downloadable documents. I'll skip right to 3, craving and recovery management. So as you can see, there's 3 videos. We go over triggers, we go over craving response and reward, and then we do craving management. And again, each one of them has a set of downloads, and that is free for you in the chat. But we cover cross addiction, we cover hope and resilience, stress and tolerance, stress management, emotional eating, building self-compassion, body neutrality, and spirituality. We are also currently working to create the second part of foundations that we hopefully will release right before the end of the year this year. So this is kind of like the first layer. And we have people who do it over and over again because you can dig deeper and deeper into those layers. Elaine, I see that you're here and you're facilitating tonight. So I just wanted to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself and see if anybody has any questions for you about foundations. And of course, I caught her off guard because I didn't know she was going to be here. She might be chatting to me. So Foundations starts tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern. Foundations will be again this spring. And Clarissa and I will be there, but our interns in the UK, so Sarah, who's here, Sarah Hood is here, along with Sharon Gregg will be facilitating at that time. And then I'm hoping to I will facilitate once, if not twice later on this year, probably starting July or August. We'll get that in there. Is it always 7 p.m. Eastern? No. This spring it will be it'll be like probably 1 or 2 p.m. Eastern this spring because the folks in the UK will be facilitating and they are 5 hours ahead of the East Coast time. Other than sugar itself, what other foods will be triggering and should be avoided, like white flour, for example? Yes. So at Sweet Sobriety, we are all about, we are non-prescriptive when it comes to food. So maybe you're vegan, maybe you're carnivore, maybe you're anything in between. Our guidelines are, oh, Elaine, I can't unmute you, but I can ask you to unmute. So there we go. So our guidelines for food is first, if we think of all the foods that are available to you on this really long table, first remove anything that's lighting up your brain like a Christmas tree. And I think when I say that, I haven't actually ever run into somebody who's like, I don't understand what that means, Molly. I think when I say that, you know what I mean. What are those obvious offenders? Once those have been removed, then we go back to that same table of food, what's left, and we're going to remove anything medically necessary. Do we, am I allergic? Am I celiac? Do I have colitis? Do I have diverticulitis? Do I have Graves' disease? Do I have something that requires me for medical reasons to remove foods? And then for preference. And I like to use raisins as an example. First, raisins do not light up my brain like a Christmas tree. Second, I am not allergic to grapes. Third, in 41, almost 42 years of life, I have never met a raisin I liked. I don't like them plain. I don't like them baked. I don't like them covered. I don't like them anything. And so that's kind of the loose guidelines that we use, when people are asking about that. Module 1 takes you through creating your own food plan. And if you're a person who wants professional guidance on food plans, we have referrals for that. And the reason why we refer out when it comes to food plans is because Clarissa and I and the team at Sweet Sobriety, we are not registered dietitians or nutritionists. Now, we do have somebody specifically who does work with us, but we make all kinds of referrals, not just to her, because our lane with the food is a substance use disorder. Okay. Somebody says, hope I need some good mantras for situations when Red Dog takes over without warning. I don't even have time to call someone. Yeah. So here's the thing. I'm going to push back. I don't think mantras are the thing. From a clinical perspective, I don't know how you're going to remember a mantra if you can't remember to call somebody in that moment because you're so hijacked. Does that make sense? So here's where I would say start practicing nervous system regulation. Start practicing breathing. And this can be before, habit stack it with a meal. Maybe you're going to take 10 deep breaths before you start each meal. Maybe you're going to listen to a guided meditation before you start that meal. Practice nervous system regulation first so that when you are then hijacked, you might go, okay, wait a minute, breathe. Just take 3 deep breaths. Now, what's the mantra that I want to remind myself of? Or, oh, who am I going to call? Who am I going to text? Can I just try planning 3 meals and not giving up specific foods? Sure. Absolutely. Give that a try. Give that a try and be radically honest with yourself. Is this working for you? And if you struggle to have that radical honesty with yourself, ask somebody to partner with you. Even if it's just to like, hey, can I just give my food? And will you just ask me questions? Or can I just give my food? And if you ask questions, you ask questions. Do you recommend being in therapy? I'm not in therapy, have complex PTSD. I always recommend as a therapist and a person who does therapy, I'm like, yes. But in all seriousness, yes, there's no reason why these two things cannot be treated at the same time unless unless one is so activating for the other that it's causing you to not be able to get momentum in one or the other. And then I would say focus on whatever the crocodile closest to the life raft is. So if your trauma, your CPTSD, I'm a person with CPTSD, and this time of year, my depression can be deadly. I can get pretty suicidal. It can be pretty dark. Now, it hasn't happened this year, but it has happened. And so I would say in that case, the crocodile closest to my life raft is going to be making sure that I stay alive. So I may not necessarily be addressing the food at the same time. So that question is very bio-individual, just like most of these. But yeah, absolutely. They can be complementary to one another because the tools that you're going to learn in therapy for CPTSD are going to absolutely help you as you navigate through recovery from food addiction. And here's why, because it's about the food until it's not about the food, because it was never about the food. And CPTSD is part of that 90% of the iceberg that we can't see. The weight, the food, the whatever, the physical stuff we can see is that 10% of the iceberg we can see. And that's like not even, it's a blip on the radar compared to the rest of the stuff that we also have to address. So anytime we can get extra support is awesome. Yes, I absolutely offer a free consult, 30-minute free consult. CPTSD is complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Okay, Elaine is available. We have 4 minutes, Elaine. Go.
Hi, I just wanted to say my Zoom was glitching on my laptop. I'm on my desktop, so here I am on my phone. I just want to say that this seems like a lot of information, and there is a lot of information in foundations. And with the help of the group, you will see people taking small steps. They will making small changes. And as you go through this material, you'll pick and choose what you're ready to do, right? It might be nighttime eating, or somebody just talked about having their 3 meals, and then maybe they'll let go of the snack between breakfast and lunch, right? And then they'll stick with that, and then they'll let go of the other one, and the between lunch and dinner, those kinds of things. And you'll just take it slow and steady. You'll come to group, and you'll share what work, the tension or the that the difficulties that you're having, and we'll try to look and see, where do you have a win? Where's Have you increased your water? Are you going to bed? Those kinds of things. So that's what foundations is. I know, like, this is beautiful. I love it. It's a lot of information and can feel really overwhelming, but it will be small steps. And again, you will individualize this for you. And I also offer 30-minute free consultations. And I'm looking forward to seeing everybody tonight. And I will be reloading my Zoom on my desktop, so it won't be glitching. It was flashing. I'm glad you guys weren't seeing that.
No, we weren't, but yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Elaine, for being here today and introducing yourself and saying what you said, because yes, this is a lot like drinking from a fire hydrant today. But the thing is that cravings is something we're always going to talk about. There are always questions around it. Please, please, please take advantage of the free resource in the chat. Go look at that free cravings module. Group doesn't start until 7 p.m. Eastern tonight. There's plenty of time to join tonight. You don't even have to join tonight. You can join before next week. Tonight is the intro. Tonight, I'm sure I'm not going to be there, but I imagine Elaine will be doing introductions and getting everybody's best hopes for the next 12 weeks. Just a chance for folks to start to get to know one another and start getting some basic questions answered. So if you can't join tonight, or if you're not ready or you're not sure, that's totally fine. There's never any pressure from us. We do this several times a year. You can purchase at any time, work on it at your own pace. Come to the free meetings, come to the free peer meetings. Get questions answered by your peers there if you want to do that. So I do have to get on to my next appointment, but I appreciate each and every one of you for being here today. If you have more questions, just email us, info@sweetsobriety.ca, or message me, whatever works for you. All of my devices sync to one another. So Take care, everyone, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.
If you like what you heard today, please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching.